This is Dallas Dirt. I'm your host, April Towery, and I'm here today with District 9 Councilwoman Paula Blackmon. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
What's going on at City Hall?
What day is today? It's a Tuesday, so that means we're preparing for a council meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
got some budget hearings.
Some budget hearings, charter review, lots going on. We're working through pension. We had our bond election, looking for a new city manager. So pick a day and there's a topic.
Right, you're busy. Okay.
Very busy.
You mentioned the bond election,
Yes.
And all 10 propositions were passed.
Thank you to the voters. Appreciate the support and the confidence that you have in us to get the job done.
So what does that mean for D9 and for White Rock Lake specifically?
Dredge, baby, dredge.
Okay.
So we have $20 million in the parks prop, and that will leverage federal funding from our partners in Washington to create a plan to dredge White Rock Lake to recreational depths that will help maintain the health and the ecosystems of the lake. We also have plenty of park money for new playgrounds and trails. We have money for our streets that need fixing. We have some homeless money. We have encampments throughout the whole district. And so we'll be leveraging that to help with encampments that are around. We have money for the Bathhouse Cultural and Arts Center that's at White Rock Lake. So there's a lot happening for D9 in this bond.
Okay, that's exciting. I remember you coming to a council meeting just covered in trash one day.
Yeah, we were having a contract that was looking at the dredging situation, and it was Christmas thing that we do. And I thought, you know what, kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
No, don't kill two birds with one stone.
Okay, right.
But anyway.
It was a political statement.
Right.
It
was not meant.
With the ugly Christmas sweater.
Because, we have precious eaglets and eagles at White Rock Lake. So anyway, we created a beaver costume that was a Santa and put trash all over it, because if you've ever seen White Rock Lake after a rain, it's full of trash.
What's the latest on the issue with the sewage spill?
They're investigated at the state.
Okay.
And so the latest on that is it's at the state level, but we're hoping that the North Texas Water District will be looking at ways to maintain their infrastructure. And so, and making sure that we don't get those spillages again.
Right. Okay. Well, transitioning to your comprehensive land use plan. ForwardDallas, you had a community meeting, and how did that go?
We had about 150 in attendance. We maintained a level of decorum that I felt gave me some insight on what is happening and what is needed for a comp plan. We have a comp plan already, and so this is just now to update it and to make it relevant into our ecosystem of how we're going to grow as a city. And I've created an advisory group to dive into each of the sections and really understand. And we know that the community residential is the one that is really getting everybody worked up on. But we're also going to look at the EJ, the environmental justice piece, and we're going to look at the urban core and all the ones, because I think in order to understand how it affects East Dallas and our part of the world, you need to understand the whole macro system. And so the question that's been posed to me is, what are the benefits to our district, to our area of town? And, the environmental justice is important, but it's also too looking at what does this mean for how our area develops, and what does this mean for our transportation systems? Because, land use and transportation systems should go hand in glove. So I'm on a journey myself to understand it and to really look at things in a micro way, but how does it affect us in a macro way?
And what is the housing mix like in District 9?
It's interesting you ask, because I'm on search for a house. We sold our house that we raised our kids in, and so we're renting right now. Okay. And so we want a smaller, house with no yard and maybe more of a walkable, connected community, not so much just a single family with a yard and all that comes with that. And so so we're out looking. And so it is predominantly single family. Very few townhomes, very few condos, and the condos that are there are like 2-story. I don't think they even get up to 3-story. You have the Village, which is a more of a rental space. And then you go out to the far east, and you have very much like Casa Linda, which is the 1 acres. And then you have the R25, which is the smaller plot for the homes that were built right after the war. So it's diverse in the single family, but they're predominantly single family.
Do your residents want more of a mix or more multifamily?
I think they want more of I think they like the single family. I mean, okay. Yeah, but I do think that there is a conversation around how do we grow corridors, because we have like Northwest Highway, Garland Road, Ferguson Road, where those corridors could probably do a mix of a townhome or a duplex type community. I know we have some, I think you covered a couple of developments that are going along that corridor. And so I do think that the corridors are an opportunity for discussion. I don't think the infill is much, because it is predominantly single family, and which is why I took my name off the memo, because it was causing a lot of confusion. So we'll just go there.
Okay.
And so it was causing, confusion, and it was we wanted to hear from staff how, if we wanted to do this, how it would look like. And I think it was just too much confusion on what that meant. And so I just felt like, it's sitting here, nobody knows really what it's doing, let's just put it to bed. And so that's why I removed my name.
So this is a 5-signature memo that Chad West filed. You put your name on the memo.
I did.
Janie Schultz put her name on the memo.
She did.
And both of you withdrew.
Correct.
Recently, even after the conversation had already got it. Well, there's so much to talk about. You mentioned homelessness in your neighborhood and the encampments. Where are you on this conversation? Have you been on these trips to Atlanta and Los Angeles?
I went to Los Angeles.
Okay.
Where am I in all this? I want to go to Houston, because Houston right now is what everybody is saying is really how the homelessness housing first model needs to be addressed. I've been to Haven of Hope in San Antonio, which is a robust campus setting for homeless services. And so the issue is, if we're doing a housing first model, then how do we provide housing for those in need of housing? And LA, the pallet homes is an option. Sanctioned encampments are an option, but do they work? And is it a solution, a long-term solution for a problem that is plaguing all parts of our city? And so my jury is still out. Okay, and that's the bottom line. But I am one of the 2 districts that doesn't have a homeless service or a homeless activity in its district, which is why I allocated some money towards that, because once we find whatever that is in our community, then we can start moving towards that, because we do have the encampments, and they're happening all over. I did see LA, we went through Skid Row, and to me, that's not an option. That is just not an option, and we need to figure out how to keep that from happening. And you can see the makings of it across the city, but homelessness is not a criminal activity in itself. And so we need to, as a city, work together to really bring more units online at all price levels. And I think that's how you get your comp plan related to homelessness, related to transportation, related to affordable housing, and all of that. Is the bottom line is you need housing, all types, at all price levels, and quality housing. I'm more interested in the ownership perspective, but that's probably another segment for another podcast.
Well, it leads me to, you've mentioned that you have 3 sons.
I do.
And you think about when you're looking at these land use documents, when you're making zoning decisions, you're thinking about the future generations.
Right.
You're having your boys being able to
Right.
have a place where they can live.
And I open that scenario, or that's what I'm looking through the comp plan. I'm looking at that through that lens. I have a 27-year-old. He is probably going to be getting married soon, right? And starting his family. He's bought a condo, and he wants to live in the community he grew up in. We raised our 3 boys there, and he coaches at his middle school. And so he wants to come back, but I don't know how he can afford it. And he's a professional. And that's who you want living in your community. And so the question is you want them as a homeowner because they're less likely to leave versus as a renter where their year is up and they're gone. And so that's the important part of this conversation that I think needs to be had. How do we get home ownership? Because we are a renter city. And so how do we partner with developers, with financial institutions, nonprofits to bring back or bring the housing for home ownership?
That's a lot going on.
And it's never an easy task.
Right.
I mean, if it was easy, it'd already been done.
Right, and you can't make everyone happy, but I think that you can have some thoughtful conversations and listen to what people have to say.
True. And I think that is what brings about like problem solving, right? Is to sit down, have the conversations, have people be honest about what is bothering them. Like what is bothering them, and work through it and not take it personal. Yeah. A lot of emotions come in these conversations, and what we need to do is just have these discussions and get to the issue of, this is the one thing that bothers me. Okay, then how do we fix it?
Well, I think you have a reputation for being responsive.
Well, thank you.
And I think that there has been some misinformation. So how do you go about sort of educating them when there's a false narrative?
I have a problem of telling people that there is falseness into that statement. Like, when we were doing the shoreline, do you remember that?
Yes.
And we talked about traffic coming out of the development, and it would go into the neighborhood, but it wouldn't because it's locked. They can't go back into it all has to come out on Golden Road. So, I mean, if there's facts involved and it truly is backing up the facts that exist, then I don't mind saying, okay, that statement may not be all true. So I see it as an opportunity to educate, to actually say, look at it this way, or this is the actuality of it. And I think it comes from raising 3 boys. It's because they can sometimes bring this big plan, right? We're going to do this, this, and this. And it's like, yeah, but you don't have a driver's license, and it's like, so how are you going to get there? You got to ask me, And so you kind of bust the bubble, and then you go, okay, but let's come back. What can we do? Let's find out. Okay, your dad can do this, and then somebody can come pick you. So, and so it's okay to have people have these notions and this information, but then to say, you know what? It's not all correct. Let's really get into the detail.
So you mentioned the Shoreline Project, and that has long since gone through CPC and council. What is the status now?
They're taking down the church.
Okay.
The community was worried that some of the trees that they had said they were going to keep had been taken down, but that was not the case. The arborists went down there. They're working and following the plan just like it is. And the trees, so it backs up into a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And there was a road or a street that had like a dozen houses, and they were concerned with sight lines and drainage and all those things that are valid concerns. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we oriented the development so that way, and it's, I think, 6 stories. And so the sight lines going down into the neighborhood, into their homes, was valid. Mm-hmm. And so we reoriented it so that way there was some townhomes that were blocking views, and then trees, and then working on the drainage situation. So Shoreline is a mixed income. 50% of the units are 80% AMI. So it's for our teachers, our firefighters, our young professionals, if you will, because as you know, housing prices are crazy in East Dallas.
Yeah, and that was one of the first, if not the first, public facility corporation project.
It was one of the handfuls that came through.
Okay. And it was really before they got controversial, I think. And
it was right when they did.
Okay.
Or that was how I felt.
and we were just starting to familiarize ourselves with what this was. And can you speak a little bit to what that means?
So a PFC is a public facilities corporation, and the city owns the land in which the development is built on. And we partner with a developer to do the brick and mortar, sticks and concrete and all the building. And what it does is it keeps taxes low Therefore, we can give there could be a better rent to be paid by the individual. And the interesting part of this is this, even though the developer is taking all the risk, the city has ownership with the developer. So when the developer pays us money, and it's not free, they actually give us a check, and they give us multiple checks. And it goes back into the fund for them to go and build other ones throughout the city. But what is interesting is that at the end of its term, which is 75 years, sometimes it's 95, it depends, what happens is then the city, in any time before then too, the city can actually retain ownership. So that way we can make sure that there is affordable units in a certain part of town. So it's not a new model. Other parts of Texas have been using it, but we've been using it probably in the last 2 years.
And what is controversial about it is this narrative that it takes the property off the tax rolls for 75
And in
years.
some cases, in this case, it was already a church, so it was never on the tax roll.
Right.
And a lot of those, that's what we're looking at, is maybe if it's city-owned land, or there's different models. But there are some where it was just a vacant piece of land. So it really wasn't a lot of taxes that was being taken off. But in my case, Shoreline was really never on the books.
Wasn't contributing to the, Also, an argument has been made, that developers aren't building this kind of housing for free. And also, there's a need for that in District 9. There's need for mixed income housing.
Yes. You can't, nothing's free anymore, April. People need to pay their bills too, and materials aren't free. And I as a city don't want to be in the development. I'd rather be in the more like the policy making and the financing and the direction versus who's, being out there hammering and laying the concrete. So I think, and I'm hoping that there is a tipping point, right? There is a point where you've saturated the market. You shouldn't do it anymore. But until that, I think this model is working. I just hope that we do it I hope that we're doing it in a way that is going to get us to the place that we need to be.
Yeah, and there were some concerns about traffic, and this is near Garland Road, so
Correct.
We'll segue into, you have partnered with Chief Garcia.
I have.
And tell me what's going on with that.
So we did a PSA. He and I did a PSA, and you can find it on my website. And what we found was, and what we've heard from our constituents and from residents, is people are driving out of control. It's a 35 and they're going 50. And, it's Abrams, it's Mockingbird, it's Northwest Highway, it's Garland Road, it's Ferguson, it's Easton. There is people driving very fast. And so we just put out a PSA to remind people that just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Don't drive as fast as you think you should be driving or can drive, because it's an open 6-lane highway. But the city of Dallas is doing what we can to make sure that those highways are adequate for the capacity. And in some cases, it's too much, which invites that kind of traffic flow. And so we put out a PSA that is just reminding, people to slow down, that we are doing everything we can to undo that capacity and to make it more, more contained, still allowing for traffic to flow, but to allow for pedestrians and more micro mobility and some connective places. And so I've just said, hey guys, be careful. You need to slow down. I was on Easton Road going 33 and a 35, and I got the most horrible looks because I was not going at least 40, and it's like, this is our neighborhoods, these are our communities, these are our kids playing, these are our cyclists going to the lake. And so everybody just needs to slow down.
And there have been some fatalities in your district.
There have been, unfortunately, yes.
So how will this Vision Zero plan address some of that?
The Vision Zero plan will be looking at all those. Well, and you have to understand, too, I've got 3 state highways. I've got Garland Road, Buckner, and Northwest Highway that are all state highways.
So the city of Dallas can't touch those?
We cannot touch those in the sense of reducing capacity.
Okay.
But we're working with TxDOT. They've helped us on Garland Road quite a bit, and we're looking at speeding And I would love to figure out some capacity reduction in those places, and that would, I think, take literally an act of Congress. But what we're doing is on Ferguson Road on Easton, we are looking to do pedestrian beacons, more timed signals, looking at are the signals placed in the proper places, so that way, we can cause traffic to slow down and even stop. And so we're just working to make sure that we don't have any more fatalities, and that people are driving the speed limit, and when people want to walk their dog and cross the street, they have a safe place to do it. Or if they're going to school, there's a lot of places, there's places on Ferguson Road where there's schools, and we just need to make sure that people can get to and where they want to go safely.
All right. Well, you've got a city manager search underway. How is that going? How is the interim doing? And what would you like to see in the next city manager?
So Kim Tolbert is our interim, and she did put out her 100-year plan. 100-year, oh my gosh. The 100-day plan, which I find it refreshing. I like to see where we're going, and I do see it as a roadmap. I mean, they just talked about it. Chief Garcia thinks that if we lifted tattoos and beards, we could probably recruit more officers, and that was on her plan. So, I'm seeing some things that what it's showing me is that she went and talked to folks and say, how can I help you get your job done better, bigger, better, faster, stronger? Mm-hmm. And she listened, and she put in a plan, and she's working with staff to bring those changes. So I would like to see somebody that has a roadmap that gives us, with us in hand, not just saying this is what we need to achieve, but really bringing us all together as a city, as a council, as a organization, and saying, what do we want to be when we grow up, and how do we get there? And that's a big visioning task. And I don't know if we could do it now, given there's a lot of noise, with all this, we have a lot going on. And so I don't want to call it noise, but there's a lot going on. And sometimes the system can only bear so much. And so I would love to see somebody who is that hub to bring everybody together, to find a common North Star for us all to go to, because it drives me nuts when you're budgeting, when you're planning, when you're trying to pass bonds or whatever, and we really don't have a clear understanding of our North Star.
Okay. Well, it's an exciting time. And final thoughts, what are your priorities for the budget?
The budget. Well, we have a pension issue. And my priorities is to make sure that we meet those obligations that we made and not strap future councils for that. So with that in mind, it really kind of develops a whole budget, because there's going to be some hard discussions to be had and decisions to be made. We do need to check and see what is the role of city government, and are we meeting that role? And if we're not, then why not? And how do we get there? And then start taking the things off that probably does, and those are the hard decisions, because a lot of those have been instituted in the organization for a while. So my priorities for budget is just to make sure that we can meet our obligations, provide services to our constituents and the homeowner, the property owner, and making sure that we keep it at a reasonable rate. So that's a huge equation, right?
Yeah, that's a lot.
And which is why that I'm literally looking under every cushion. Because, if we don't ask the question, then how can we say then we tried?
Well, looking forward to seeing how that shakes out. That's all for this episode of Dallas Dirt. Thank you to Councilmember Blackmon, and we will see you next time.